Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
All right, we're live. Hey, welcome. This is the first episode of the Planes, Trains, and Comic Books podcast.
Number one,
yeah. I got me. My name is Matt Hansen, and my co-host here.
And I'm John Johnson.
The first one we did was called Batman Hush, and John picked it. And why did you pick that, John?
Well, I picked it because I've read some Batman stories, and while I know I like Batman, but I had never read this one. I heard it was really good, like Rogues Gallery, kind of like just a fun adventure story.
Yeah. Did it meet your expectations as far as Rogues Gallery?
And pretty much, I mean.
It felt like it really did try to hit that expectation of everybody must be in this damn book. So let's go through the story of Hush first, just to give the listeners a little bit about what it's about. So it kind of, I mean, this book beat you in the face with his parents were killed like every 3 pages. So it really goes through the Batman origin story a lot and then rewrites it to where Batman had a friend in his childhood that no one's ever heard of before.
His friend had this similar situation.
Yeah, where his parents went through some shit, and it was kind of weird to do that. But basically, Batman, in the current day, I guess current day would be 2004. I think it was written in, or something like that.
Yeah, because this is no longer canon because of the New 52 and stuff, right? So I think
Well, it is Batman continuity. It is like Batman 6, the 606 or whatever. I don't know what the issues were, but I mean, it is part of main continuity. And Hush is still in the all these people are still in the comics.
That's why.
So I think it is part of continuity because they erased the 52. But there was the regular 52, then there was the new 52, and then they went back from the new 52 because no one liked it, and now they're doing Rebirth, which is like, forget everything we did the last 4 years, and we'll relaunch it now. So, So in Hush, I believe it's canon, but they were like, what if there was someone as strategic as Batman as his villain, and that villain like gets all of Batman's rogue gallery to fight him or manipulate his rogues gallery into fighting him in different ways and whatnot. So, and it's his biggest test yet, apparently. So, what do you think of the story overall?
It was a little, I guess, it felt rushed sometimes because it was so many things that they're obviously fitting into it. So it was a little choppy, but I mean, I liked it overall. It was cool. Some of the characters I feel like had some good time, and some of them I feel like they didn't really have as much.
There. Yeah, it was like you're on a page and then you're done.
And then it's done. Yeah. Like I overall, one of the characters that really didn't seem like she fit in all was Huntress. She was just kind of there.
She was literally there for like a half page, and then
she came in twice.
And then no one remembered her.
But for she helped Batman when he in the beginning.
And that might be whatever was going on in the comics at that time. Maybe Huntress was like the thing, and they were like, we have to have Huntress in it or something. I don't know what was going on in Batman then, because at the time I did not read comics. So that's the story of Hush. That basically Batman comes up against a new ultimate foe and must figure out new ways to defeat him or them. So I don't know. How did you first heard about Hush through what?
I just heard this is like of Batman stories. There's a couple like full collections that are really good, and The Killing Joke, The Long Night, or Long Halloween, and Hush were like the top 3 that I see stand out. Like, you got to read these. And I've read the Killing Joke several times. I've read that before, and I like that. It's a good kind of like standalone. But this one, I heard it had a Rogues Gallery villains and a new villain in the background. I was like, oh, that's cool. So,
okay. So that's why you picked this one. You just thought it'd be a good like starter.
Basically, yeah. Like I have enough Batman lore, gets me going.
And you're like, hey, it's got everybody in it.
Exactly. So,
yeah. My first experience with Hush was when I moved to Austin, Texas, and from Hawaii. I couldn't read anything in Hawaii. There's no comic book stores there. So when I came here, I was like, oh, sweet, comic book stores. I can buy the comics I've been wanting. I went into a store and they had that. Like I think it was the first Absolute was Batman Hush, which is like Absolute format for anybody who doesn't know is the super fancy like 18-inch tall by 12-inch wide, super nice glossy pages and everything, really expensive books. But this one was $50, and it came in a slipcase and everything. It was super nice. And I remember I think I texted my brother or called my brother. I was like, hey, what are these like big format ones? He's like, oh, anything in a big format is going to be like worth it. Like it's going to be one of the best stories ever or something. So I bought it and read it and I was like, that's the best Batman story I've ever read. And that was like one of the first Batman stories I ever really read. I mean, I grew up on the animated series, of course, but besides that, I hadn't really read comics. So that was like one of the, I think I've only read that at that time and then maybe one other time. And I could not, for the life of me, remember like who the actual bad guy was and all that stuff. And then it was weird reading, like in my mind I had been like, oh yeah, Hush is really good. And then rereading it this time I was like, wow, this is way shittier than I remember it being. Not in a bad way. It was fun. I'll say that. It was fun to read, but the writer specifically, I should say the writer is Jeph Loeb, and then the artist is Jim Lee. So I mean, Jim Lee now, you're like, oh my God, it's one of the biggest names ever. And I think he is like head of DC right now. Like he's one of like the main, like not CEO or whatever, but like control of DC guys. I mean, he's great art. I grew up looking at his comics when I was a kid in the 90s and everything. It was very apparent that he drew in the 90s. It was very weird to see 90s art in like a more modern day comic because there was a lot of like weird poses. I was like, why is she standing like that? Or why is he standing like that? Or how did, like Killer Croc's face, like in the first issue, I was like, where are his eyes?
Yeah, it was...
I don't know where I'm supposed to look. Where's his face? Like, I can't see it. There was a couple shots where I'm like, what is going on?
There's a couple, pages I remember specifically. Like, I thought the Catwoman suit was cool, but when she's swinging on her whip or not, I was like, how is she... Yeah.
It was just weird. I mean, I never thought about that when I was a kid. It was just like, oh, that's like a cool picture or whatever. But now... I guess because they draw comics differently or just what I've read. He looked totally like, whoa, this is super dated. And then Catwoman's costume threw me too. I was like, why is she wearing those boots? Or what, like, she had weird boots on that I never noticed before. And because the rest of that costume is really cool. Yeah. It's like, she's got the goggles and she's got like a really sleek, costume. And then there's boots that are just like weird looking to me. I don't know. They don't fit. But the weirdest looking character design for sure was Killer Croc. I was like, I can't tell what his face looks like. Or like where he's looking in this panel. I can't even tell like which way he's facing.
Yeah, he kind of switched together into like he's like on somebody and then they're really focused on like his mouth.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, okay, I guess he's on top of that? I can't tell. So that was a little weird. And then the writer, Jeph Loeb, for me, he's a hit and miss writer. Like, sometimes I read it and I'm like, that was a really good story. And sometimes I'm like, that didn't do anything for me. And Hush was kind of on his lower end of storytelling. Like, because he did Long Halloween, and that's like a really good, from what I remember. We're going to read that, and I might have to eat my words. But last time I read it, I remember it being like, that was a really good, way to tell a mystery, like who done it or what's going on.
Yeah, that one I heard is a really good, like, it's Batman being a detective.
Yes, exactly. And this was like, it was trying to be that, but it never really quite got there. Like, yeah, it was weird. Like, nothing made sense. Like, he would jump to conclusions that the reader wasn't part of. He's like, I need to go see, Poison Ivy or whatever. And you're like, why? And then he would say there was a lot of like inner dialogue that I was also like, all right, guys, like kind of force feeding this inner story inside of Batman that would fill the reader in after the fact, like after he was already doing something. You're like, oh, I guess that's why he went there. But
yeah, I think that overall the weirdest arc in it was him and his like relationship that is blossoming kind of with Catwoman. And then all of his inner dialogue with that, like, oh, I don't know if I can trust her.
Yeah. But then he does, and then he's like, never mind. Like, I guess I'll say this. Spoilers on all these podcasts. We're totally going to spoil the whole book. So yeah, if you want to read them first, and then listen to the podcast. So yeah, speaking of spoilers, so the other thing about this book, and this is the reason why I can't ever remember who the fucking bad guy is there's like 4 bad guy reveals. Yeah. There's and it took me about 4 issues to get into this book. Like I was making myself read issue 1, 2, and 3. I was like, come on, it's gonna pick up somewhere and it's gonna get okay. And it took about 3 issues for me to be like, oh, okay, cool. And I think that was about the time Harvey Dent showed up and revealed himself to be Hush in quotation marks. Yeah. And then you're like, holy shit, it's Harvey Dent. And it's not Two-Face, he's actually Harvey Dent, like his face is repaired. And you're like, how did that happen? Out of nowhere. I have no idea. Was this in the story before? I don't know. They never mentioned it before, so I'm assuming they just revealed it in this issue. But it was 3 issues in or whatever where that happened. So that was weird. And I was like, oh, I don't remember it being Harvey Dent, but I guess, okay. And then it turned out, no, that was a fake thing. But they don't say that. They don't say like, no, that's not Hush for real. They just, later on, another Hush shows up.
Yeah, there were multiple Hushes, and you had to...
Another Hush shows up, and it's Jason Todd.
And see, I thought that was a real reveal, and I actually at first was
like... Yeah, me too!
Like, holy crap, like, how is he not dead? What happened?
Yeah, what happened? How'd they bring him back?
Because I know, like, the Red Hood story a little bit, but then this I was like...
Yeah, that's also why I was getting confused. I'm like, I know he's back in the comics now, or had been before. I don't know if he's now, but, like, at some time in the recent past, Jason Todd was actually back in comics. I was like, is this where they brought him back? And I was all confused. And then... Oh, joke's on you! It was fucking Clayface as Jason Todd, and I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then they tried to like cover up like why didn't Batman realize this before? And then I totally knew it wasn't Jason Todd by like the half of the fight.
Yeah, he never said my name.
Yeah, I was like, what? Like it was kind of shoehorned in a lot of that stuff. And then the third one was some random janitor or some shit that he helped. He revealed. Remember, like, at the end, before they reveal the real Hush, the actual Hush, there's, like, some janitor in a Hush mask or whatever, and he's like, what's going on? I'm Hush, or whatever. And he's like, what are you doing, Marty, or whatever his name was. I don't know what his name was. And you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Some rando that hasn't been in the comic the whole time. They're like, he's Hush. He's some mechanic. And then they throw in all this backstory of these characters that are red herrings. Like, they're not real. Yeah. They're not in the comic. So... we had to get like 3 pages of Jared, the janitor, and his storyline.
Yeah, the guy who helped him build the Batcave.
The Batcave. And you're like, what? Yeah. Oh, that was also out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All of a sudden...
I need to go see him.
Yeah.
He's the only one that helped. I was like, I didn't even know Batman had somebody help him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was like he was being a detective in his head the entire time and leaving out all the stuff that was actually, like, important. It's like, in the entire time, he's explaining to you who these people are and why they're there without actually telling you, like... without actually connecting the dots for you, the reader. And then eventually you catch on like, oh, okay, so this is what's going on. But it took a lot longer than it should have, I think. And they did a bad job at connecting the dots on that. But I did have a fun time reading it overall. Yeah. And then the thing that annoyed me was the real Hush. Here's the big spoiler. The real Hush is his best friend from when he was a kid. His childhood friend that they got, like, his parent... Okay, so Bruce Wayne's parents died. He had a best friend... Then his parents died.
Well,
no, it was the other way around.
His best friend's parents
died.
But that was weird because Thomas Wayne in this comic was also a surgeon, and he tried to save his friend's parents. Tommy, what's I don't remember the Tommy something, and he tried to save his parents' lives, and he didn't save his dad. He only saved his mom.
Right.
And he was like, oh, it was sad. But for some reason, Thomas Wayne was a surgeon in this one. I never remember him being. He was a businessman, not a.
No, he was a doctor.
Was he?
Yeah, they were doctors.
I didn't remember him being like a world-class surgeon, though. I thought he...
maybe they just retconned that for this story. I don't know. But he was a doctor.
That's true. I guess I remember
for sure.
But
yeah, that was the thing. So they introduced this character that you've never seen before. He's best friend of all time you never mentioned before in 600 issues. And then they became estranged after his parents died and all this stuff.
Batman falls. His rope gets cut. He's chasing after...
That was at the very beginning. The first thing that happens that like Batman's like, that's weird, is someone cuts his bat line when he's chasing Catwoman. It shows him he's got like a fractured skull and broken bones, and he's a week later or a day later, he's back fighting Superman or whatever. And that's the other thing. Superman shows up in issue 2.
Yeah, like really fast.
He shows up for no reason, just randomly.
Yeah, that's like I understand that like Poison Ivy controlled him.
Where? How?
But he's also not human. How does that stuff affect him?
Let me ask you this. So either Poison Ivy got control of him while he was Superman, which I'm like, how could that happen? He's Superman. He's going to be so fast or keep you away. You know, there's no way she's going to like intoxicate him as Superman. So that means, and I think they set this up. I think they specifically when they were in Metropolis. In issue 2, there was like a scene where he's like, oh, there's a flower person downstairs. And they're like, here's a bouquet. And there's a scene where it shows him, like a whole panel, showing him Clark sniffing flowers. So I'm assuming they were implying, although you didn't know it at the time, it would have been better if they showed the flower girl have like red hair and like in a green dress, and then you could put that together in your mind. there was no reason why you would have thought Poison Ivy, was the flower person or whatever, or gave him bad flowers that were going to mind control him. But then that also means that she knows who Superman is, because she obviously sent the things to him, knowing that she would then be able to control Clark Kent, Superman.
Yeah.
That's never talked about ever. Like, what the fuck? How do you know who Clark Kent is? And that would be the whole thing when he was a kid. Is Tommy, his best friend, was so good at chess, and that's why he's a match for the greatest detective of all time. He could beat him at chess.
Yeah, he's always one step ahead. He says you always have to know your enemy's weakness.
Yeah, fuck you. Fuck you, Tommy. And that was like the thing. It didn't make any sense. I was like, okay, that's the other thing. Okay, great. He's the greatest mind in the world. Why can he go toe to toe fighting Batman?
He's got training.
Did he train? They never showed him training.
Well, I guess they kind of, because he used some of Ra's al Ghul's the pits and stuff.
He used the Lazarus pit. That just means that he's crazy.
Maybe that was supposed to imply that he also got some kind of training. I don't know.
They don't say it.
They don't.
If anything, okay, I believe maybe he's got super strength. But how are you going to go, fight Batman and you're a doctor or whatever? You don't know how to fight. So that was weird.
I thought it was weird. I know he was his best friend, but he hadn't talked to him
in 20 years.
But he was like, Morse code tapping, like, get me Tommy.
Yeah, I need Tommy. I'm so beat up. I think that's why they threw in Jerry the janitor or whatever, because they're like, we need to explain somehow how he thought of this, and we're just going to say the guy who built the Batcave for Batman was told by Hush to put this device, and then it would put subliminal... That was weird. Subliminal messages in the Bat computer, which he would see, and then call... And then that would make him think of Tommy when he was injured.
How did Batman never notice?
No, yeah.
That?
They were just like, I've been talking about Tommy recently a lot. That's weird. So it was all around. There was some weird shenanigans, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. It was fun. But I would not consider this like one of the best Batman stories ever, deserving of like an absolute hardcover or anything. Like, if you're going to compare this to like Killing Joke and all that stuff, this one is not. I would say, we're going to read Long Halloween. Actually, we're going to read all three of them because there's 3 volumes. There's Dark Victory, Long Halloween, and some other one. Haunted Night, I think it's called. And those 3 are like all by Tim Sale and Jeph Loeb. And I think they're all way better written than this one is. But for some reason, this one's got all the accolades. And I think it's just because Jim Lee's on it, and Jim Lee is a really good artist. Although, did you notice how many pouches everybody like Hush has? His costume is like, he's got bandages all around his face, so you can't tell who he is. Then he's got like a bulletproof vest with like Cyclops from the 90s belts around him and shit. And then he's got like all these pouches on his legs and
his his jacket has like
he's got like pouches on pouches on pouches. Like, it's just super 90s, and it was a really big shock to be like, wow, Jim Lee still had... It's like, now I think he's way better than he was then. Because if you look at his art now, there's no pouches, there's no like weird sexy poses that don't make sense for either men or women. And it was just like, wait, what? Like, it was like he still hadn't gotten past some of his 90s habits or something.
Yeah.
But the coloring in this was beautiful. I really liked the like super kind of like dark blues and less blacks, but more dark blues and dark greens and that kind of stuff. So it had a cool coloring scheme. It also had the telltale sign of like an early or late 90s, early 2000s comic, because it was using digital lettering before. I don't know if you like all the boxes, all the like top boxes of him and his head are all like blue and white, and like the white lettering of blue, and it looks like it looked like a digital box, like a clip art or something.
Yeah,
and then and a lot of them are like that. A lot of the word balloons are obviously like early digital stuff. So I don't think it's aged well, and maybe at the time, especially, I don't know where comics were at that time as far as in the they must not have been that great as far as people wanting to read them and how good the writing was, because this was considered one of the best Batman stories at the time. So I'm glad we've gotten past that, and there's a lot better stuff now. But when I first read it, I thought, wow, this is great. I hadn't read anything before that ever, except like I read Spawn or something when I was a little kid, that kind of stuff in the 90s. Now, after like working at a comic store and reading everything I've ever read and like good solid writing, it's like, whoa, this had some definite faults in it, but it was fun.
Yeah, I feel good about at least having that background knowledge of some other stories. This wasn't the first Batman I ever read. It was nice to see, like I get why it was cool. It's the action of it. There's it's a little choppy, but there's always something going on.
It's definitely like if you watched the animated series and never read comics, and someone was like, "Hey, you like all the Rose Gallery from that show and everything? Here, read Hush. Yeah. It's got everybody in it except Penguin." And they might have shown. I think they showed one little panel of Penguin in it.
I think there's a panel, but Mr. Freeze wasn't in it.
Mr. Freeze wasn't on it. I don't think. And so yeah, I mean, there's like a couple missing, but for the most part, it was it had the entire Rose Gallery. And that was the other thing. This is the main thing I didn't like is so Hush is supposed to be. They set him up to be. He's the mastermind. He's the smart guy. He's always better than Bruce at chess and all this stuff. And then it ends up the Riddler is the guy who planned everything. So I'm like, why did they need Hush at all? He can't fight. He can't think. Apparently, he's not as good as the Riddler. Like, why did he have any of this? Like, I don't get it. And so
that kind of seemed like a cop-out ending.
So yeah, they're just like, we don't need to have that character anymore. They just like push him out, which is why he hasn't really shown up ever again. I think there is a Hush 2, or like he comes. Yeah, he comes back. I think I don't know if it's actually this Hush though. I think it might be Jason Todd, or it's some other character.
I think they go in. I read a little bit more of the character afterwards, and I think he does kind of get a little more of his backstory and a little more of him seething over Bruce all of these years.
Okay.
Because it wasn't necessarily the fact that his Bruce's dad saved his dad. It was that he cut the brake lines on his parents' car.
Right. Oh, that was the other reveal.
Yeah, he wanted them
to die. Like, it wasn't even that he was mad that Bruce's dad didn't save his dad. It was that he was trying to kill his parents for the inheritance, and Bruce's dad stopped him.
And that's why.
And that's why he's mad at him. I'm like, all right. Like,
for 20 years, I plot against Batman now.
I plot against Batman because my parents didn't die when I wanted them to. And it took forever for me to get my inheritance.
Yeah, even though I still became a world-renowned surgeon and I'm a billionaire.
Everything's going good for me. I'm still mad, though. So it's weird. It was a weird reveal. Like I said, there was 4 reveals of who Hush was.
Yeah.
And I had to think about today for this podcast. I was like, wait, who was Hush actually? Like, I just read the damn thing, and I've read it 3 times in my life. I should know at least who Hush was. And because they have 4 different reveals, I forget who he is all the time. So yeah, that's the basic. The basic of Hush was it was fun. It was a mess, I thought, but it was fun. I would recommend it for like a fun read. If like someone's read every Batman, all the good stuff, or never read a Batman.
Yeah,
at
you
all.
Want to get into Batman.
Yeah,
I like Batman. He's a cool.
Like,
I watched some of the movies.
Here's a fun story that's easy. It eases you into it. There's enough characters that that you're not going to be lost.
Yeah, and
because it does have every page his mom and dad getting shot and backstory on backstory, flashbacks and all that stuff. It's for someone who hasn't read comics, it's like, oh, now I know who these people are because they explain it word for word.
It spoon feeds a lot of it.
Yeah, yes. So that's probably why it's good more than anything. But what do you rate it out of 10?
I mean, this
is our first one.
Yes, this is
We're going to read so much better comics than this. So if we give this a way higher rating than we normally would, or than we do later on. If we're harder on other books, it's because this is the first one. So first one, like on your scale of like enjoyability, art, or like where it belongs as far as like canon.
Some of it was a little odd, but overall I liked it. It was a like you said, it was a fun read. I think it was, for as choppy as it was and some of the details to it, I feel like it was still a good overall. It definitely is not. It's not bad at all. Like I would
not say this is bad. I would say a bad comic to me also, like, it's just boring. Like if I'm skipping pages, I didn't skip any pages on this. I was just like, when is the story? Like, when is this going to tell me who's Hush and what's going on? But it wasn't like a horrible comic, or I've read worse than that. So.
I'm in the middle. I would say this is a 5. This is
okay. This is our baseline neutral comic then, because I would also give it about a 4.5, 5. So yeah, this is gonna. I mean, that's going to be hard because if we read like Dark Knight Returns or whatever, that's going to be like 11 or whatever. So I don't know how we're going to go to 20 or something. But
we'll figure out the scale.
We'll figure out the scale. But for now, out of the one book we've read for this podcast, Hush gets a 5 from John and a 4.5 from Matt. So with that being said, I think we're finished with the first episode of the podcast.
I think that's the first one for Planes, Trains, and Comics.
Awesome. See you guys later.
Next time.
Bye.
Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.